Now then, guys, so I'm back from Gamescom, and whilst I was there, I got a lot of stuff on Harlowe and such, but I also got a chance to play all of the Vault Hunters to various degrees. I managed to try out all of the 12 skill trees and the various augments and talents, so I kind of wanted to go through my experience playing them all, which talent trees and abilities that I liked, which ones I didn't enjoy as much, going through like theory crafting some of the actual trees themselves, which ones have cool talents, but I also wanted to put it all into a tier list. Like I put in the title of this video, this tier list is way too early for people to be taken too seriously, and because it's only a glimpse of the game that I've got to try, it's ignorant at worst, right? It's like trying to do a tier list of sports teams before an event, like Plat Chat Power Rankings before our Masters Champions event in Valorant. For those that know, you know how difficult it can be, because there's still so much we don't know, and we've only seen so much gameplay or experienced a little of it anyway. But the reason why I wanted to do it as a tier list specifically is mostly for my own sake. We're all going to go into Borderlands 4 with preconceived notions about how you feel about these characters, judging off whether you've played them or not, or just the gameplay that you've seen, or what other content creators have said. Some of these things that I believe about these characters will 100% be wrong, and I thought it'd be interesting to highlight those in the future. For example, if I say here that Rafa's Apophis Lance tree feels and looks bad and it's going to be awful to level with, but it actually ends up being quite good once I actually play the game, I think that's worth highlighting to talk about some of the things that I missed, whether it's talents, the way that it plays, and just general mistakes that people might make when they actually pick up and start playing Borderlands for themselves. So yeah, it's essentially my opinion and my first impressions of it, and it's not fact. And everybody's different strokes for different folks, and so on and so on, and the Scooby-Dooby-Doo, yeah. But without quitting any more share, let's dive into Harlowe. I wanted to start with the red tree, the Chrome Accelerator one, because it's one of the best. And I also, whilst we have gameplay on in the background, I wanted to say that some of these Vault Hunters and skill trees I didn't get specific gameplay for because I played on the show floors on the Xboxes there. Had other playtests that I wasn't able to get gameplay of, in this case for this tree, but also playing stuff like on the Switch too, which I want to talk about a little bit briefly later on because it did have some impact on what I thought about one of the characters. But yeah, so I'm going to be using other people's gameplay in the background, and I'll link to those videos in the description if you want to check them out a little bit more. Also, some of the skill trees and the builds were preset, so I couldn't mess around with other talents or augments as much as I would have liked to, but I will highlight those specific Vault Hunters and skill trees as and when we get to them. But for Chrome Accelerator and the Creative Bursts tree, this is easily an S tier tree. It feels, for all of the Vault Hunters, one of the most well-rounded, fun, robust trees to be working with. And the good thing about the fact that it's level 20 gameplay, which everybody was on, so it's not max level, it's not when you begin, and it's also this vault like mobbing section with a boss at the end, it is a good testing ground to see roughly where these characters feel in the middle of their like leveling journey. It does give you a challenge as well. The vaults are quite hard in of themselves because you have mobbing, mini bosses, and then the main boss at the end. But when you're looking at the ability itself, the Chroma Accelerator, it feels great, it feels impactful, it's intuitive and easy to use, with a decent cooldown around it. The augments also really change up how it works, either by using the blast as a way to prime enemies with elemental effects, or pull them around and ragdoll them, create some singularities. There's just like a lot of really cool options that are fun that I can't wait to get my hands on and try a little bit more. Some of the specific talents as well look quite strong, and the tree honestly just has a lot of variety. If you need survivability, you can get it. If you want fire rate, you can get it. If you want handling, you can get it. It just feels that no matter which way you want to play, this tree is going to have something for everybody. And also, people mentioned it about the Borderlands 3 videos I did way back when. Whilst we're focusing on this tree in particular, obviously people are going to sort of dip into different trees. You might focus on Chrome Accelerator, but I have a couple of points in C's today. I'm not saying that you shouldn't do that when I do it this way of like looking at each of the skill trees. It's more just focusing on what this main brunt can give you. And because the gameplay was level 20, it wasn't much room for me to dip into other trees, or I didn't have the option to because it was all preset, you know? So I do want that to be said too. But moving over towards the Seize the Day tree, which is the one with the 0 point phase grasp ability, this is like a B tier, maybe like a B plus, A minus kind of style. I'm not going to put too much focus on where they would land, but I've sort of gone over this in the previous Harlowe video. This feels like an ability skill and a talent tree that will feel very, very good in the later levels and at endgame, but playing it at level 20 felt incomplete is probably the best way to describe it. Like I was missing some key talents or just a good weapon or a class mod, just some form of synergies to really make it shine and come together. There's no worse feeling that I had in Borderlands 4 than grabbing an enemy in stasis, killing them very quickly because it's a very strong ability in of itself, but then having to wait 35 seconds to use it again. Now, there are augments and talents that can not only cause the stasis effect to move on to multiple people, similar to Amara in the past with some of her augments and stuff, but also that you can actually move the entanglement debuff effect where you split damage across people onto new targets after you kill them. Some really nice talents that can just keep the gameplay gravy train going. You have those good ripple effects that can make you feel strong, but it almost feels that they're a necessity to make this skill tree work. The slam ability of the actual like 0 point stasis thing was cool, and honestly something that I didn't use as much as I could have or should have. And it's a big upgrade from essentially how Amara and Maya played with the phase grasp ability of previous games. Because you can sort of tell, like, you run into the same issues that phase grasp had with Amara and Maya in the past with Harlowe 0 point, but it's still an improvement from the previous games because of the cool stuff you can do around it and the augments as well. So this does feel like a trade I'm pretty set on is like for leveling, not going to be great. It's going to be rough in places. There's just better options, but I'm really excited to see what it's going to play like at endgame because honestly, there is a lot of stuff here that really starts to work. For bosses, however, and like the raid bosses, I'm not convinced of what the dev said that you can make it work. It still feels a little bit of a tall order for 0 point to be working against them. And finally for Harlowe we have Cosmic Brilliance. This is the Flux Generator tree and I give it a solid A. I went over this in the last video, so again, just paraphrasing it. An ability and a skill tree that is better than I ever expected. The ability is effective, it's fun, which it doesn't look it like, unless you've played it, it's really hard to get a gauge on how fun it is to play around this ability, even just throwing it down and keeping it moving. And it's just very robust in how effective it is. I worried when I saw this ability that the augments were just going to be boring, right? They're just going to be more supportive elements, but there's some really cool things in here, like the explosive damage of when you move it, it does radiation damage and it does cryo blasts where you moved it from. But it was a blast, excuse the pun, to play during the vault, but even versus the boss as well. The cooldown is the longest, but it did have that nice ebb and flow balance of, okay, shit has hit the fan, you use the ability, you can deal with pretty much anything. If you're waiting for it, you need to play a little bit safer. And that's just like a really cool gameplay loop, albeit a little bit longer than some of the others. So it was a really nice balance, I suppose. It's also challenging, right? Because there's no way, as far as I could tell, to end it early. So if you throw it in the wrong position, it can be really difficult to get any use out of it. So you have to be smart and have good timing with when you throw down this, much like you would do in Destiny with the Warlock Wells, right? It's pretty much that's a perfect example of you find good timing, it's an amazing ability. You screw it up, if you're playing with other people, they're going to hate you. But this tree isn't as well-rounded as the Creative Bursts one. It's still quite good. The potential transference capstone looks really fun, where you can teleport where the flux generator goes. And there's a lot of stuff in this tree overall that looks more like, I'm curious to see how this works and ultimately what it looks like, if it's any good. More so to some of the other trees where I'm looking at talents going, wow, that looks insanely strong. Wow, that looks so much fun. I can't wait to try it. In this case, it's more of a, I wonder how that works. I'm curious to give it a go. So it does feel a little bit more middle of the pack in comparison for Harlowe and everybody else. That it's better for leveling than Seize the Day, but maybe not as good at endgame as the other trees for Harlowe potentially. But that's it for Harlowe, the character that I got the most time playing. Now moving over onto Amon, and I wanted to start with a Crucible tree because this is where I think the most surprising thing is going to come in. I'm going to put the Cybernetics tree, the one with the Crucible double axes, in B tier. I didn't like this tree that much. And frankly, I didn't enjoy Amon as much as I thought I was going to. He was like on maybe the top of the list to main him as the first character, but now he's maybe moved to the bottom, frankly. The other side of this as well is I played Amon first on the Switch 2 when I played this tree, and it didn't play well. It's not only the fact that it was like set to 30 frames per second, but it's also the controller. Like when I played it on the Xbox, the vibration of when you're shooting, when you're taking damage, it was really responsive. Like it was actually really good. As somebody that doesn't really play console, I was impressed of just how much information just the vibrations gave me, and gave me a lot more information about how the game was playing around me. It feels like you're playing with a cardboard cutout with the Switch 2 controller, and so you just feel detached from what you're doing. So maybe that negatively impacted my opinion of Amon, but I didn't enjoy playing on the Switch 2 all that much. It just didn't feel as responsive as the other games naturally. I think everybody could see that coming though, right? But going back onto this tree, it also was a preset tree, so I couldn't change much outside of the augments. And whilst you can like change the augments, which changed weapons for Amon to hammers to swords to axes, it was nice that it changes the element too. Especially when you're going through a vault and you run into different types of enemies. That was nice to have that choice, but it felt a little bit like Amara back in Borderlands 3, where you have to go into the menu every so often to change what elements you're working with, depending on who you're fighting. And for some people, that's not an issue, but for me, I don't want to be jumping into a menu in the middle of a fight to change an augment. I just prefer to sort of pick an augment and go into a fight and sort of see how I do from there. But it's nice to have that option for those that don't really care about those elements. Again, it's my own personal opinion. It's just something that I don't really want to have to wrestle with whilst I'm playing. Also, this preset was built in with the drone weapons that can spawn off you doing stuff and fly around and do damage. It did not feel impactful at all in the slightest. It didn't feel like I had much like help from them, right? But also overall, the issue that I had with many pet abilities or just summons is there's no way, as far as I could tell, to tell the summons what enemies to focus on, like Flak had in Borderlands 3, where you can press the action skill again and your pets would throw barrels at them or just start attacking and charging them, etc. Again, there might be a way, I just couldn't work it out. I might be a complete tool, but at least for the drones, you can't do that as Amon to essentially get them to fight who you want them to fight. Otherwise, they're just going to do their own thing. But if you do want a character to focus on the abilities more than your guns, then this is a great one, because the ability uptime, always having these axes to throw, it was pretty much consistent. And so this tree is going to be really, really good for leveling, because it doesn't really matter what guns you have or what elements those guns are. You can just use your axes for what situation you end up in, and it's going to feel pretty strong. But I guess what I was hoping for was something like the Clawbringer in Wonderlands. Something that had some weight when you throw that hammer at the ground and it has a big elemental explosion. That's what I was hoping for with Amon when I saw some of his initial gameplay, but it just didn't feel like it had that weight to it that I wanted. Some other characters sort of came in clutch with that instead. So it might be a little bit more worse than most other people would say. But I had my hopes up for this and was a little bit disappointed, frankly. But that might be, again, the Switch 2 might have just been a bad day for me. Hard to gauge, but I did want to kind of just go over that. The other trees for Amon were quite good. Moving over towards the Vengeance one with Scourge. This was one I didn't get to change the augments in because of the preset build, so I wasn't able to experiment with this skill tree all that much. It pretty much was just a case of moving over towards the Scourge ability and trying it out a little bit. Which meant that the ability didn't feel strong. I died a lot and it was specced into other stuff. So didn't really have much movement to move stuff around with this build, but I still loved it. I actually really liked this tree. The whole like stacking up Vengeance for the uptime with blocking damage and then offloading it as more offensive capabilities was hard work. But I feel like if you start to get that down in that gameplay loop, it's going to feel really fun. As somebody that played World of Warcraft for the longest time, but also in games like Deadlock, I like to play the tricky characters, right? Like Sinclair, Viscous, Holiday, that require like just tech to be able to move around and get the most out of these characters, right? They're the characters that I personally enjoy playing the most. So stuff like this tree was really up my alley. It's not as easy or pick up and play, and probably not as good to level with as some other characters or some other trees for Amon, but I think that higher skill floor made it more engaging for me, and I can see that if you get this down and you start specifically going into some augments and some talents, you can make a really fun build that is probably going to be really good for endgame stuff as well. If there's a tree that I could just, if I had the chance to play another tree and just get some more time in on it, it would 100% be this one. So I wanted to give it a solid like A tier for Amon because it's still pretty good. And I'd also give an A tier over to the Calamity tree as well with Onslaughter. As somebody that also is a bit more of an aggressive player that likes to hold W, this felt like a good tree. It's a shame that I just couldn't go into some of the other augments because I think that you could get a much more engaging and insanely fun gameplay loop with just running in and punching everything with the flaming fists. I think that this is also going to be another good tree to level with. I think, honestly, you can't go wrong with the leveling trees for Amon. I think he's going to be really fun to level up to level 50. And as somebody that enjoyed playing Amara's Brawl tree when I was getting her up from level 45 to 50, I think it was, that was a blast. It really was a lot of fun, and I feel like that's the kind of fun that I get from this tree too. Even though that this like Calamity tree isn't that focused on melee specifically, sure, there's a lot of skill talents in there, but it's more than that, right? The other problem, I suppose, with Amara's Brawl tree endgame was it felt like it capped off towards the high difficulties. It was never going to match some of the other stuff that Amara could do in other trees or even other Vault Hunters. But I don't think that that's going to be as much of an issue in this game as it was for Borderlands 3, especially at launch. This is also a tree that I'm just not really that certain about. I enjoyed it more than Crucible. I wish I got to try it out a bit more, but I didn't enjoy it as much as like Scourge and stuff because it did feel a little bit just run in and punch stuff and keep resetting and stuff. And obviously because the build wasn't built for these action skills, it didn't have the survivability or the synergies to get the most out of it. So TBD, I suppose, on it, but it did feel a lot of fun, and I can see why people would want to main Amon because his skill trees have a lot of options. It just might not be for me. Moving over to Vex, and we'll start with the Vexcalation tree and Incarnate, the one where you do a big like explosion and then you throw out the Eldritch Blasts. You know that whole like TikTok trend of when it goes for like Marvel films and they have reactions to it? You know the one where it's the guy going, I mean, it's all right. That's kind of how I feel about this tree, full stop. Like, it's good, but it's not blowing me away. I think the issue with it, though, is completely different to some of the other characters in that it feels great to play. The explosion of when you use your action skill and then the Eldritch Blasts feel very impactful. Like, they've got a good kick to them. But visually, it just lacks it. I don't know what it is about it, but there's like a disconnect between how good the ability feels versus how good it looks from your POV. Naturally, you are changing to third person a little bit when you do that explosion, but I don't know whether it's like the augment specifically or something else. Maybe it just takes some getting used to. It didn't feel like it had that. It didn't feel as good as it felt to play just from looking at it. And from watching a lot of gameplay, I didn't get to go to the fan fest, so I was watching gameplay like you guys. This is an action skill and a tree that is like, it looks all right. It feels great, but it does look all right, you know. The cooldown is decently long for it, but you can focus into the uptime of the ability and the cooldown, and obviously the augmented capstones to just fundamentally change how this ability works, because it is a little bit clunky, I suppose. You have the explosion and then you're firing out Eldritch Blasts and then you're waiting for however long, but you can customize it in a way to really suit what you want to do with it. So I think it is going to be really well rounded for leveling, for end game. It genuinely was a decent tree. It just doesn't get the impact of the explosion, or the blasts don't look as strong as they feel. And I like the focuses on stuff like the kinetic damage in this tree. And the augments are all really varied and interesting, and I can't wait to try them out a bit more. If there's a tree that slept on the most out of all of the Vault Hunters, it might be this one. We've seen a lot of gameplay of it, but I do think that you really want to give it a go before you write off Vex as a character for you, potentially. But moving over to the Here Comes Trouble tree, where you have the face familiar of Trouble, the tiger, the cat. This is B tier, but I think that most people would expect it. It's one of the weaker trees in the game because of the focus on the pet. And we've had experiences with pets in the past with Flak, and it feels weird to just have a tree that's almost just focused on that effect of it, I suppose, because the pet was not great for Flak at the start of the game. It's better now still, but I don't know, the whole tree is almost focused on like summons. I will say, however, though, that this tree played better than I thought it would. Trouble wasn't useless. He was like, pretty decent. But the problem is, like I said before, you couldn't really direct him to focus on the target that you wanted outside of the pressing the action skill again to teleport them and turn him into a badass. That was fun, like, and useful, but a lot of the times, Trouble kind of did his own thing. The augments are all right. Again, very focused around Trouble and what they can bring to the table. The skills and talents that you can pick to focus on minions feel more applicable and useful for the Dead Ringer summons with the Spectres and the Reapers than Trouble potentially. So I just don't think that there's going to be much about this tree that's going to give people more than what they expect. If you want a pet tree and you want to focus on running with Trouble because you're a crazy cat person, this is great for you. Honestly, it plays well. But if you're expecting something about this tree to like surprise you and blow you away, I don't think you're going to get it, but I hope I'm wrong. I hope there's something in this tree that we're all just overlooking, but I couldn't work it out from the gameplay that I had. Maybe it's a capstone. I don't know. We'll see. And then finally for Vex with the fourth seal. This is the one with the Dead Ringers. This was a preset one as well, but I did get to try out some of the other trees as well. I think I like this tree, but I don't know. As a Zane player, the clone summons feel good, but knowing that there's a capstone towards the end where you can essentially give your Spectres your equipped gun, naturally I'm going, okay, yeah, Zane Sandhawk all over again, and Zane Anarchy as well. There's some caveats at least to stop this capstone from matching how broken Zane's was with the double agent tree. Which is nice, and the summons just feel good in their own right. I like throwing down a bunch of Spectres, but I didn't like the augments. The problem I had with the augments is it felt too much like, here's an augment that focuses on what the Spectres do, or here's an augment that focuses on what the Reapers do, which are the melee summons that run around. There was never really any augments that focused on both, that weren't just like, not really involving the actual summons themselves. Again, I wish I had a way to focus the attention of what my Spectres or Reapers were focusing on enemy-wise, or to just move them out of bad positions. But no doubt, again, it's level 20. Maybe some augments or talents would allow you to do that a bit more. Maybe even some like legendary mods and stuff. There's only so much access that we had. Hopefully there's something around the corner that will really make this tree absolutely shine, but it's not bad. Reapers felt okay. They liked a little bit of that oomph, but I think any melee summon seems to have that issue, I guess. But it did feel good to essentially be McGinnis from Deadlock and just throw down a bunch of turrets with the Spectres and have them all shooting an opponent, and felt pretty good against the bosses too, for the most part. The uptime of the abilities also was pretty high. You always have something to work with and to play off. You're not waiting 45 seconds for something to happen. And if you're a Zane player, there's a lot of kill skill uptime builds that you can play around with the Dead Ringer's fourth seal tree in particular. So if you like Zane, Vex might be a good option for you. And finally, last but not least, Rafa, we're going to start with the Arc Knives tree, as I was going to initially give it an S tier, but you can blame Moxie for me knocking it down. The reason why is I really enjoyed this tree. I like a lot of stuff in here, and just overall how Rafa plays with his trait as well. But there was something after playing him that just wasn't sitting right with me, but I couldn't put my finger on what it was. And I remember mentioning it in Moxie's chat when he was streaming, and he said that Rafa, when he's using Arc Knives, feels like he's in low gravity with how he moves, and he lacks a little bit of that heaviness. And it reminded me of the Interceptor ultimate from Anthem for those 12 people that played the game, where you pull out like the swords and you start doing melee damage and dancing around. Like, it feels good to be that mobile and to dash between people, but it lacked a little bit of that weight. It felt fluffy is the only way I could describe it. It just lacked a little bit of that lethality, I guess, the clinicalness. I don't know what it would be, but outside of that, I really like some of the stuff that this tree had to offer. And overall, I just feel like Rafa has been slept on as an option. I think he looks outrageously strong with some of the augments and talents that he has, and a lot of variety in what his capstones and augments can bring to him, not only for the gimmick tree, but for all of them, frankly. I do think that there's some elements in here that also give you a relatively challenging gameplay loop. There's also some talents that just look broken, and if you want something quick and easy to run with, it's going to be Rafa. But I think for this tree, it gives you a lot to ponder and to think about. It does feel a little bit like Amon's Calamity Onslaught tree, that survivability might be an issue, especially when you're leveling. But hero fantasy wise, this gameplay loop felt very much up my alley of what I wanted to see, and we'll see how it fares with a bit more time. If Arc Knives can get a little bit more of a kick to it, then it would absolutely be an S tier tree for me, and I can't wait to play more of it. But moving over to Remote Agent, I'm going to give this a solid A. Like, the Peacebreaker cannons are great, and if your favorite foods like margarita pizza or vanilla ice cream, you are going to love this tree. Is it bland and boring? A little bit. Soldier classes can just be that, but there has never been a bad soldier class in Borderlands yet, with how they play and how they feel. Like, the cannons are strong, but they auto lock in for the most part, so it doesn't feel as good as a skill shot ability potentially. But as somebody that loved playing Roland in Borderlands 1, stuff like Iron Bear was fun with Moe's when it was actually strong enough to effectively use. There just isn't too much to write home about. I think it's just one of those ones that, like, play it, try it, don't write it off. Like, I implore you to be more open to Rafa as a character choice, and certainly for this tree, because some of the capstones that we've seen, even from developer videos, look strong and fun. And the final tree that we're going over is Rafa's People Person tree with the Apophis Lance. This is C tier. It's the only one that belongs in C tier from the level 20 gameplay that I had. Easily the worst tree to play at this stage in the game. But again, I didn't have much access to the skill tree itself and some of the augments. But it is also the tree I'm looking forward to the most. Some of the stuff in People Person looks broken as hell in the higher branches, and just gives you so much variety in what you can do, like changing the Apophis Lance to be a big laser beam or a taser where you need to get close to them and have some like close quarter melee action like arc knives. It just looks ridiculously strong, and like the talent to automatically crit enemies that are electrocuted, it's balls to the wall insane pretty much across all of this tree. Whether you want to find something a bit more unique in your playstyle or just find something broken, it's going to be here, I think, in late game. Much like Harlowe's Seize the Day tree, it's going to suck to level, I think. But throughout like getting to end game and stuff, it would not surprise me if the majority of high-end Rafa builds from people are from this blue tree. I'm very curious on how it's going to play and ultimately if it's as broken as it looks. But that's everything I wanted to go over in this video. Thank you very much for watching. Again, don't take too much of this tier list to heart. I'm not claiming I know everything about the game. It is just initial impressions, but I want to put this out here to formulate my general impressions of these characters, the skill trees and the talent trees, what they can do, so that when I actually get to leveling and playing endgame and creating builds for both leveling up and getting to level 50, what stuff was I wrong about and why? What were the talents that changed my mind? What was the stuff I overlooked? What were the mistakes that I made with Rafa, for example, of how I approached a character going to level 50 and at level 50 itself? So there's still plenty to find out. It's just, again, my impressions of what these characters were like. They all feel great. Certainly upgrades from previous characters that we've had. There isn't a bad Vault Hunter. It's just more about what you want from a character. But we'll cross that bridge a little bit more when we get there. Again, thank you very much for watching until the very end. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.